pass on my coat. I'm out the road, look like I'm Batman. Yeah,
Welcome back into The Door Report, episode 278 on a lovely Wednesday evening, August 21st, 2024. I am Will Byrum, joined as always by my co-host, Trevor Hulan, a.k.a. Hack Squat Jim Duggan.
What it do?
That screwed up my rhythm a little bit,
Dude,
but
you're
it's
fine. You're fine. It's not like we get paid for this.
And we have a very special guest joining us today, TDR's attorney, allegedly, Blake Fromang, now three-time TDR guest Blake Fromang, as our roommate arrives home, and I hear the door opening in the background, so let's hope he doesn't run up and yell anything.
What up, Alex?
But Blake, thank you for taking the time and joining us here on episode 278.
Thanks for having me, three-time guest. I think I'm the most reoccurring guest on the show, so it's an honor, and have to change the Twitter bio now, so excited to be here, boys.
That was going to be my second question. That was going to be my first question, actually, is when are you going to change the Twitter bio? I guess as soon as this is over, you got to change the bio.
Yeah, the episode will release at 3 a.m. on the audio version and 7 a.m. on the video version. So right after that, Blake can transition that bio.
Yeah.
But here on episode 278, as always, the Door Report is presented by 615 Collectibles. If you're into sports cards or sports memorabilia, check out 615 Collectibles on eBay for an unmatched selection of sports cards. Shipping is always fast and free. Today on episode 278, joined by former Vanderbilt offensive lineman and dynamic playmaking tight end Blake Fromang, we are going to be predicting the 2024 Vanderbilt Commodores season. We're going to be going game by game and previewing the schedule. And then to close it out on episode 278, Trevor brought up something literally right before or
No, we
after
talked about it last week.
I forgot.
Yeah.
He brought it up to Blake. We're also going to be doing 3 bold predictions to close out the episode here. So
I love a bold prediction. Also, before we go, we have to ask Blake a question as you were going over his accolades. Blake, there are murmurs that you might be the greatest Vanderbilt football player to ever wear the number 87. Can you confirm right now on the record?
They gave me that jersey right after Jordan Matthews left, and the answer is no. He is way better than me. But am I the best podcaster guest to wear the 87? I don't know. I think there's an argument there.
what year did you wear the number 87 jersey?
It was 2014.
Oh my God, his right after he left.
Okay. So it literally was directly after to carry the torch of Jordan Matthews. I was saying that because we actually have, or I bought a number 87 jersey, but I think it's a Mir Abdur-Rahman's jersey. So I was kind of hoping that it was a year or two later, but obviously you had switched over and transitioned to offensive line. So Blake, thank you for joining us again. We have not had you on for the entirety of the offseason. So before we get into segment one and get into the schedule, how are you feeling about this Vanderbilt football team? Just what's your initial reaction to this team and what you've seen all summer and in the fall camp?
It's wait and see. I listen to Coach Lee's interviews where I can. He doesn't hype it up a lot. So I'm trying to find things that'll get me excited to listen to it. Like I'm hearing the Pavia is somewhat taking over. I'm excited about that. The O-line's looking good. D-line's looking good. I think we got a shot. Like in any other conference in the SEC, I think we obviously traject a lot better, but our schedule this year is so hard. As good as we are, other teams are 3 or 4 deep with our best players at every position. So we'll see. I'm not hopeless.
Not hopeless. That's positive. I'm not completely hopeless, but when we get into the schedule preview and predictions, there's very little hope compared to last season. Not like last season worked out, so maybe that's the key to the recipe is I have to lose all hope and then things turn around and get better. So we have the schedule preview, but before we get into that, don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Door Report. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and Google Podcasts. And while you're at it, give our podcast 5 stars and a review on iTunes. It's now time as Phoebe knocks the ball off the table for segment 1. Welcome back into segment 1 of episode 278 of The Door Report. I am Will Byrum, alongside Trevor Hulan, and joined by TDR's attorney, Blake Fromang. Allegedly. Gotta add the allegedly. We have the schedule preview to get to. So just a little recap on where Vanderbilt is sitting. Everybody listening already knows this. Vanderbilt coming off a 2-10 season in year 3 from Clark Lee, headed into year 4. Vanderbilt currently sits with an over-under on their win total for the 2024 season, according to FanDuel, at 2.5 for the over-under. Granted, those odds on the over are minus 200. So slanting very heavily to Vanderbilt winning more than 2.5 games. That doesn't sound great. But I guess I was about to ask, are you going to take the over or the under? But I guess we're going to find that out over the next 30 to 45 minutes of this episode. So let's go ahead and get started on week 1.
Indubitably.
Let's go ahead and get started on week 1. Everybody out there knows, at home against ACC non-conference opponent Virginia Tech, August 31st, 11 a.m. kickoff. On all of these, I have the Vegas over-under written down, according to FanDuel, with the odds on the over. I also have each team's record from last season. So Virginia Tech last season went 6-6 during the regular season, 7-6 overall after a bowl game victory against Tulane. Their over-under, according to Vegas, is 8.5, with the over on that being at minus 128. And we actually have a line for this game against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is a 13.5-point underdog at home, according to FanDuel. So Virginia Tech, I'll start on all these. Who wants to start on the predictions? Because I don't want to jump into it. So Trevor,
I can do my predictions first. Yeah.
All right.
So we'll preface this. Me and Will discussed this before the pod. I don't want to say that this is the most important game of the season, because it feels silly to say that the first game of the season is the most important. But this game feels very important in a couple of reasons. One, I think this game could dictate how the season goes, and in a couple of facets. I think if Vanderbilt goes out there and absolutely gets their doors blown off, I think you're looking at probably a season similar to last year, 2-10, around there. If Vanderbilt comes out and doesn't win but puts up a fight, I think that does, as like SOV as that sounds, I think that does build a little bit of momentum. If Vanderbilt somehow goes out and beats Virginia Tech, I think that could legitimately change the trajectory of the season, and we could see a bowl team. Like, people are going to be like, oh, once again, Sunshine Pumper. I don't think that's crazy to say that if they beat this Va Tech team, that could catapult them to a road of 6-6. So I look at this game. I think it's very important. Brent Pry's obviously, I don't want to say obviously. Blake could talk about it more than we could, because he was around Brent Pry more than we've ever even thought about being around him. I think he's a good coach. Va Tech got out to a slow start last year. Then they put in Kyron Drones. He sort of catapulted them into being a really good football team. They return a lot of starters, like you said, return a lot of depth. I think it's impossible to give a prediction on this game, just like it is with any other game this season. I'm going to say it, though. I'm going to say it. Clark Lee, DC. This is going to be a top 10 defense. Diego Pavia is going to let his nuts hang. We're going to run the ball all over these guys. Doors win. Beat Va Tech. Final score, 2017. Doors on top, baby. 1-0.
Good luck following that up, Blake. Literally, we talked about this right before we started recording. Trevor this morning, I don't know what he is done throughout the day. This morning, I asked Trevor what his overall record for the season was going to be, and he looked at me dead in the eyes and said 3-9. And I said, "There's no way.
3-9 is still technically on the table.
You're lying to me.
3-9 is still on the table.
I know once we start recording, you're not going to predict 3-9, and then you start out with a Virginia Tech victory. Maybe in the most Vanderbilt way possible, they start out the year by beating Virginia Tech and still go 3-9.
I think Diego Pavia has that juice, that intangible juice that Mike Wright had. You know what I'm saying? To where Mike Wright was not a good passer, but he somehow rallied the offense and the team around him and led them to victories that they should not have won. I feel that way about Diego Pavia. I think we got a dog at QB1. Give me the doors. Give me the doors. I think Clark Lee shuts down drones.
Blake, what do you think about that?
I agree with Trevor. I actually think this is the most important game on the schedule. A lot of drastic changes made in the offseason. There's been a lot of hype, a lot of talk, a lot of moving parts. And really, this is a rubber meets the road moment. I'm sure Coach Lee, in some sense, is somewhat apprehensive to see will this boat float when they put it out there, because they're running a whole new scheme. In terms of Coach Pry, he was the D coordinator when I was at Vandy, and he's a great coach, great man, just an incredible person, heck of a recruiter. But what I think going into this game is, Coach Pry, what are you going to do when the doors run all over you? Vanderbilt 28, Virginia Tech 24.
Let's go!
Game 1, and I already see I'm going to play the fucking wet blanket of this entire episode, and I hate it. I really didn't think that was going to be the case.
Be the villain. Embrace the villain.
So, Blake, I agree with you and Trevor. I don't know if I agree it's the most important game of the season. I think it's by far the biggest game on the season that can change the trajectory in a positive way. I think even if they go out there and if they get dominated by Virginia Tech, like beaten by 28 plus or something like that, obviously that sends bad messages and something's wrong within the program, or Virginia Tech's just way better than we think they are, which I kind of doubt a little bit. But if Vanderbilt's able to win this game, it changes basically everything about what I'm going to be predicting this season. If they beat Virginia Tech week 1, then just crumple up and throw it into the garbage everything I'm about to predict the rest of the season, because that's going to send them into a whole different stratosphere of possibilities. But if they go out there and just play a competitive game, I don't think it sends a message either direction, really. I mean, I think it's positive for internally for fans, but as far as wins and losses go, if they just play a competitive game, looking at this schedule, that probably means a 3-9, 4-8 season. So Virginia Tech, we've talked about, and I've mentioned multiple times, this is a team with a lot of roster continuity, a lot different than a lot of teams across the country in the modern transfer portal era. It's not just they have quite a bit. They have the most returning starters of any team in the country. They return all 11 starters on offense. They return 9 starters on defense. They return their starting kicker and punter from last season. This is a team with a lot of experience. They weren't great last year, but once Kyron Jones came in, they had a pretty good stretch. Kyron Jones threw for 17 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, and ran for 818 yards last year. Vanderbilt always, under Clark Lee, under every coach, struggles against mobile quarterbacks. I have nightmares about Kyron Jones running all over this potentially much better Vanderbilt defense. So unlike you and Trevor, I'm begrudgingly going with a loss week 1. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think Vanderbilt's going to play them relatively close. Right now, it's a 13.5-point line. I think that's pretty dead on. I can very much see this game being around like a 27-10, 27-14 game. So I'm not really confident on either side of the gambling line, but I'm going with a loss week 1, unfortunately. So Trevor and Blake predicting wins over Virginia Tech. Me, a little less positive. I'm going to go with a loss, but I can see it happening. I can see a path to where they come out and shock us, but at this point, I can't get my hopes up. Last year really broke me.
Yeah, that's fair. Blake, are you going to be at the Va Tech game?
No, I'm looking at going sometime towards the end of the season, but I'm not sure. I'm probably not going to be at that one. law stuff and all. Keeps me busy.
Dude.
It's also an 11 a.m. kick, so if you're going to pick one to come to, that's not
And I'm not
necessarily
wearing
the
all
ideal
black.
one.
I'm not wearing all black. I'm not doing that.
Okay, well, that's fine. Then you just don't have any grit. I mean, and that's okay. If you don't have any, that's fine. It's nothing to be ashamed of. But me, on the other hand, loads of grit. Alcorn State, do we really need to break this down? Vandy is going to absolutely drag their nuts all over these guys. Rest in peace, Steve McNair. Vandy's going to beat the hell out of Alcorn State.
All right, so I guess we're moving forward, Mr. Podcast full host. We're going to week 2
we
now.
are.
We're going to week 2 with Alcorn State coming to First Bank Stadium. September 7th, 6:30 p.m. kick, so we're actually going to get to tailgate all day. That will be nice. So come out to Lot 2 for that Alcorn State game. Should be a good time leading up to an FCS opponent. I say that. We had a good time leading up to that ETSU FCS opponent as well. So it should be it will always be in my mind when I'm 60 years old and going to a game and they're playing an FCS opponent and everybody's talking about how this should be a fun game. It's still going to be in the back of my mind. The ETSU game broke me, and then the rest of me shattered last season.
Mm-hmm.
I say that all the time. One win over Virginia Tech, and I'm completely back. But Alcorn State, just to give a little bit of context, went 7-4 last season, 6-2 in their conference. They played one FBS opponent last year. That was Southern Miss, and they lost to Southern Miss 40-14. For a little bit more context, Southern Miss last season went 3-9.
Ooh.
So Alcorn State, not a bad FCS football program, but not a top 25 caliber FCS program. RIP Steve McNair. This should be an easy win for Vanderbilt. If the worst case scenario in my mind is what happened last year against Alabama A&M, is they come out slow and then slowly take over and win something like 47-13. So I'm going Vanderbilt, obvious victory in week 2 against Alcorn State. Blake, you got anything to add?
Yeah, you just hit simulate week on college football 25 on this one.
It's so easy. Doors dubs, dude. You don't even have to. You don't even have to play the game. You're like, dude.
Doors dub.
I know my CPU guys are going to go out there and get a big fat dub. I agree. I think this is going to be. I tell you what, though, guys. If we somehow beat Vatech, that Alcorn State tailgate is going to be fun as hell.
Oh, it's
That's going to be a fun tailgate.
Blake, I know you're busy with the law and everything. Ooh.
Oh,
But-
yeah.
But if Vanderbilt beats Virginia Tech, you might have to try to make it to Nashville for the Alcorn State game.
If they pull one off on Virginia Tech,
Is he going to commit to it publicly?
If
I
they
think
win
he's
by
looking
10
towards
against
Miss
Virginia
Fromang.
Tech, I'll do it. If they win against Virginia Tech by 10, I'll do it.
Let's go.
Everyone out there, you have heard it from the man himself. He did not say allegedly.
No.
He did not say allegedly. That is a public statement, a verbal contract.
Yeah.
If
And-
Vanderbilt beats Virginia Tech, Blake Fromang will be in attendance at the Alcorn State game.
And as Blake knows, verbal contracts are still legally binding. Isn't that true?
I could go through a whole analysis with you guys, but if certain things happen, yes.
I will say if that does happen and Blake comes to the Alcorn State game, even though it's not his number 87 jersey, we might have to get him to autograph that number 87 jersey and then frame it and hang it in our living room.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it, brother.
Okay, Blake, this is an even bigger week 1 against Virginia Tech now. A lot hanging in the balance.
Blake, why don't you just give us your game worn helmet that you tweeted out?
No. That's not going to happen. That's never going to happen. But the one thing about the Alcorn State game is I don't know what the rotation is going to be like with Pavia and Nate Johnson. I expect him to have, if he's going to make a splash this year, I would like to see him do some stuff in that Alcorn State game because he's going to get the ball in some opportunities. So I'd like to see what he can do.
So we're all kind of sweeping this should be an easy victory, as everyone would expect in a schedule prediction.
Mm-hmm.
Week 3, September 14th, on the road at Georgia State. Thank you, Derek Mason.
Yeah.
6 p.m. kickoff at the old Turner Field. Georgia State last year went 6-6, went to a bowl game, won their bowl game, so went 7-6 on the season overall. Closed out the year, however, with 5 straight losses prior to that bowl game victory. Their head coach, gone. Left during spring. Sean Elliott out. I believe he took a coordinator role or a position coach role at South Carolina.
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah. So Sean Elliott's out. In new head coach Del McGee. But also on top of the head coach, Georgia State also lost their top receiver from last year, Robert Lewis, who went to Auburn. Their top running back from last year, who went to Missouri. Their best offensive lineman, who actually went to Virginia Tech. Their best corner, who went to Boston College. And their longtime starting quarterback to graduation. So Georgia State was a pretty solid team last year in the group of 5. Pretty solid. But their over-under on wins this year, according to FanDuel, is 4.5, and that over is at plus 134. Mm-hmm. So right now, Vegas is predicting Georgia State to have 4 wins on the season. Trevor, what do you got for Georgia State?
Yeah, Georgia State, last year, probably about week 4 or 5, I remember texting people and saying, like, hey, I think this Vanderbilt team might lose to Georgia State next year. Early on in the season, as you said, they were humming. Really unfortunate circumstances happened to them. Like you said, their head coach left in the middle of the night in like February, and then they hired Del McGee, who Georgia recruiter. I think, on a side note, I think Del McGee eventually is going to be a really, really good football coach. He just absolutely ransacked everybody and took everybody's crooch whenever he was at Georgia. I think he's going to have a really good long career. I don't think they're going to be good this year. I believe they're projected to be dead last in a bad Sun Belt conference. This should be another easy doors dub. You just go in, you sort of, I don't want to say play it safe, but it's just like, you know what? Like, we know we have more dogs than you. Just kind of go in there. Don't be lackadaisical, because that's how upsets happen. But go in there, do your game plan, do what you got to do, get out healthy.
So you're predicting a win.
A huge win, yeah.
So
that will be a fun game to go to at Old Turner Field, I think.
I will be attending, but Trevor has the Doors starting out 3-0. Blake, what do you got?
I'd say this one has a potential trap game vibe to it. I think we'll win. I don't think, Vandy, even when I was there, we'd play like UMass or something, and we'd win, but it just isn't a pretty one. Like, we're due for one of those every now and then. That might be one of these games, I think. We could also blow them out. That'd be sick. But that has one, the potential for being that one Vandy game. We should win big. We squeak out at the end of the year. So, I don't know. I got us winning that one.
Mm-hmm. On the road is always a little bit of a red flag, and a Georgia State program that's not bad overall. Mm-hmm. But I read it all off in the preview, every point that I had. Any concerns I have about that game, once you actually dig into Georgia State, are taken away. I actually think the line, obviously it's going to relate to what Vanderbilt does in the first couple of weeks, and Georgia State as well. I think that line is going to be a little lower than what some people are expecting. I can see it being a 9.5, 10.5 point line for Vanderbilt, but maybe even a little less than that just because it's on the road. I will be in attendance for that game. Me and my dad are going to that one, so go to a unique setup for Georgia State at the old Braves Stadium. But, yeah, I'm going to go with a win on that one. I think that if Clark Lee in year 3 struggles with or loses to Alcorn State, Georgia State, or Ball State, as we haven't gotten to the Ball State game yet, but if he loses to any of those 3 opponents, I'm going to fully shift over into the get rid of Clark Lee. He's not the guy trained. If you can't beat those 3 opponents in year 4 of your tenure, you might not have the juice. You might not be the guy. So yeah, I've got Vanderbilt beating Georgia State. Trevor has Vanderbilt beating Georgia State, and Blake has Vanderbilt beating Georgia State. So Blake and Trevor both have Vanderbilt 3-0 to start the season. I have them at 2-1. Little positivity here at the beginning.
A little juice.
Now the schedule does not get easier. I will preface the next part of this.
Yeah.
Week 4 on the road against preseason number 11 Missouri. September 21st. Last year, Vanderbilt played Missouri, and actually a relatively, this is sad to say, one of their relatively more competitive SEC games last season. That doesn't say a lot. Vanderbilt lost 38-21. Missouri's they were good last year. They're expected to be a legitimate college football playoff contender this season. They went 10-2 last season, 11-2 after their victory in the Cotton Bowl. Trevor, their over-under right now is not over under 9.5 wins. The over is plus 146. Is there any possibility Vanderbilt goes on the road and upsets Missouri?
I'm going to be honest, guys. I have this as Vanderbilt's first loss. I think this Missouri team is going to be really, really good. I think Luther Burden is the truth. I think even if you had a stellar secondary, which I think Vanderbilt's secondary definitely upgraded, but I think even if you had an all-SEC secondary, I think you would have a tough time stopping Luther Burden. I'm going to chalk this up as an L, also because I know he's a nerd, but I think Drink is actually a really good football coach offensively. I hate him, and he's like nerdy as hell, and I don't want him to be my head football coach, but I do think he is a good football coach. So I'm going to go ahead and chalk this up as a Vandy L.
Trevor's first loss of the season, moving the doors to 3-1 after a loss on the road against number 11 Missouri. Blake, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
So Missouri's actually a pretty tough place to play. It's a cool stadium. Like they got it down pat up there. Luther Burden's a problem. We need a lot of things going right to be able to stop them. Maybe Colby Taylor's the kryptonite to Luther. I don't know. The offensive line's going to have a really big game to establish the run. We always playing pretty close. I think it could go either way, but I'm going to go loss here. If we got that Virginia Tech momentum still going through week 3 and everything's clicking, we got a shot. But, we've seen this plane fall apart before. So if we got the momentum, maybe, but probably not. I'm going loss.
Yeah, first tough road environment of the season because Georgia State's not going to be a tough road environment, I would imagine. I haven't attended a game there, but I wouldn't imagine it's too raucous of a crowd. Normally I have to fight every fiber of my being not to see Missouri on the schedule and want to predict a close game or have them win just because it's Missouri. And traditionally, since Missouri joined the conference outside of their first couple of years, that's a game that Vanderbilt has a chance in, year in, year out. This is not one of those years. You mentioned Luther Burden, Brady Cook returning, Eli Drinkowitz going into his 5th season, continuity at the offensive coordinator position with Kirby Moore coming back for year 2. Great offensive line. The only drawbacks to this Missouri team and the concerns when I was reading through season previews and different things, they lost their best defensive player, their edge rusher, Darius Robinson, who was a first-round pick. They also lost 3 starters from their secondary. So Vanderbilt from last season, I might point at that and say, oh, that's an opportunity for an upset. Those two things don't help Vanderbilt this season, losing pieces of their secondary. So I don't think this is a coin flip. Personally, that's where I'll disagree a little bit with you, Blake. I think Vanderbilt loses this one in pretty big fashion. I think the secondary is going to be better, but I still think Missouri and Brady Cook are going to be able to just dice them up. So I'm going Vanderbilt loss, moving them to 2-2 on the season. So Trevor and Blake both at 3-1 with losses to Missouri. I've got Vanderbilt at 2-2 with losses to Virginia Tech and Missouri. Then in week 5, Vanderbilt has a much-needed bye week. So before in week 6, they take on an easy opponent in week 6. I mean, this should just be walk through them. Number 5, Alabama. The Crimson Tide come to Nashville on October 5th. Alabama, as we all know from last season, went 12-2, lost in the college football playoff semifinal in overtime to eventual national champion Michigan, 27-20. New head coach, a lot of storylines out of Tuscaloosa. Nick Saban is gone. Kalen DeBoer has stepped into some massive shoes there. I think there are a lot of concerns, or a few concerns from the actual Alabama fan base. I'm not so sure this matchup against Vanderbilt is one of those concerns. Trevor, what do you think?
Yeah, I will say, though, I do see, as I'm reading the tea leaves, I do see there is a possibility that we have a 3-1 versus 2-2 Alabama matchup. I'm just saying it's a possibility. Could you imagine how rockin', how feral, how disgusting the bank, specifically Section F, with the goons leading the charge would be if Vandy's 3-1, Bama's 2-2? What we don't need is another Nephi Lealo situation. That would be catastrophic. That would tank the season. I'm going to go ahead and chalk this up as an L. I think that's safe to say. But, hot take, I don't think Alabama is going to be that great this year. I think they could, by Alabama standards, of course. I think there's a realistic possibility they go 9-3.
I mean, they have a brutal schedule.
They've got a tough schedule, and I don't think Jalen Milroe's good. I don't think he's a good quarterback.
Blake, what do you think about that? Because Trevor has thrown down the gauntlet here.
I don't think he's good.
What? You don't think Jalen Milroe is good? And you think Jalen Hurts is good?
Yeah, Jalen Hurts has been to a Super Bowl, and he's probably going to win a Super Bowl this year. Jalen Hurts is the truth. Jalen Milroe almost got benched. He should have been benched at the USF game.
How'd that game go?
I mean, they won, but he wasn't great.
Right.
It was a dogfight with the Bulls.
And last year, Hurts lost to the Buccaneers in the playoffs. So what are you trying to say?
It was a down year. He had a bad year. Brian Johnson was a terrible offensive coordinator. That wasn't Jalen Hurts' fault. That was Brian Johnson's fault. Also, we should note, Blake cheers for an NFL team that wears orange. That's crazy to me. Couldn't be me. Couldn't be me.
You're from Tennessee and say I like a Yankee team up north. I mean, that's probably more of a betrayal.
Hey.
You're not even from there.
No, but hey, it's Go Birds. I'm a fan because of J-Matt. So there's a connection.
All right, so this week for me, this is the inverse of the Alcorn State week. You go from playing on freshman to Heisman, and I just don't see it, guys. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I just don't see it. That's going to be a tough week. Grab some beers, relax, see what other games are on, and just tough through it, and then move on to the next one.
Unfortunately, we will be there, so we won't be able to just change the channel. But, yeah, I don't know if I mentioned it. Alabama's over-unders 9.5 wins, plus 116 on the over. They do come off playing Georgia the week prior to Vanderbilt. In maybe any other team in the SEC, that would actually be a storyline that could possibly lead to some type of upset victory. I don't see it. Same exact reason. Well, not the same reason I predicted Virginia Tech to beat Vanderbilt, but Alabama is so much better at pretty much every single position across the board. But also just throw the cherry on top, Jalen Milroe as a mobile quarterback. I don't see any way Vanderbilt prevents him. You say Jalen Milroe's not that good. He's going to look real damn good against Vanderbilt. I almost guarantee it. He's going to look unstoppable because he's a mobile quarterback.
We'll see. We'll see. I would like to see a Clark Lee defense try and scheme it up. I don't know. He probably will, but I don't think he's a good quarterback.
We will see. Trevor and Blake both have losses. Blake is shaking his head at Trevor's
If he was wearing a Philly jersey, you'd say he's the best thing ever.
He can't throw like Jalen can.
Jalen can throw.
Jalen can throw. Yeah, Jalen legitimately might be the best dual threat quarterback since Warren Moon.
You've been hit in the head with a dumbbell hack squat.
No,
dude, I'm not even a Lamar Jackson fan, but you're talking about that with
Warren. No. Lamar is a running merchant. Jalen can throw it. I'm a Lamar Jackson hater, and it's Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick are the two greatest mobile quarterbacks of all time. That's just not true. That's just not true. Also, I do love Michael Vick as an Eagle guy, but since we're about to play Vautech, it's big screw Mike Vick on this side. We love dogs at TDR. We love animals. We love cats. It was always screw Mike Vick. It was always go Jalen Hurts. He loves dogs. He loves animals. That's my king. We're gonna win a Super Bowl this year, Blake. Trevor.
All right, so everybody's predicting Alabama losses across the board. So now we head into game number 6, week 7, on the road against the Kentucky Wildcats. This is a little more up in the air than I think the last couple matchups have been. On the road against Kentucky, October 12th, 2023, Vanderbilt played Kentucky and lost 45-28. Kentucky's over-under, according to FanDuel Sportsbook, is 6.5, with minus 122 being the odds on the over. Last year, Kentucky went 7-5 in the regular season, 7-6 after their bowl loss to Clemson. So, Trevor, do you see a repeat of 2022, or do you see the Commodores going on the road and getting stomped at Kroger Field?
I'm going to be honest, boys. Once again, I'm reading the tea leaves. I'm reading the tea leaves. I love this matchup for the Doors. I love it. I love it. Kroger Field, basically a library. Basically a library. Those people wouldn't know a football if I threw it at them. All they know is basketball. Doors going to send these bozos back to the coal mines early. Doors win big. If we stop Byrum Brown.
That's a big if.
Colby Taylor is going to lock him down. And Colby Taylor we trust. Doors win big. I'm going to go Doors. I think the offense gets rolling. I'm not going to lie. I think we kind of run all over them. I think it's a little old school football. I'm going to go Doors 32, Kentucky 20.
Trevor predicting a victory over the Wildcats on the road. Says the
Also,
man.
Brock Vandegrift, we can talk about Jalen Milroe not being a good quarterback. You know who's a certified not a good quarterback? Brock Vandegrift.
Blake,
No
are you
argument
feeling
for
that
me.
level of positivity?
I think there's a lot of extra pressure on Clark this year. I mean, that Virginia Tech game's a toss-up. If that goes bad, Missouri goes bad, Alabama goes bad. I mean, at that point in the season, he's going to be coaching for his job. I think he's, it seems like Jerry Kill and those guys would be able to keep the band together. But I think that's a good obtainable win for Clark to get. I'm going to put my faith in him. I think with a mobile quarterback, we got a chance. I like our defense. I think we're in that game. Yeah, I'll give us a win there.
I love you, Blake.
Wow. Trevor and Blake both going with victories. I'm once again going to play the spoil sport. Brock Vandegrift coming from Georgia. I'm not so sure he's actually a good quarterback. I fully agree with what you're saying. He's completely unproven. I don't think we don't know. We'll know at that point in the season through 6 weeks, but Byrum Brown at wide receiver scares me. I think he's going to run amok on the
Nashville
Vanderbilt
kid.
Commodores. Yep, locally here. I do think, and we'll hit on this after we do the full schedule preview, I do lump this game in with a couple other conference games as more, I don't want to say toss-ups because that's not the right word, but winnable games. I don't think this is one that Vanderbilt wins. I fully do agree that at this point, I think they will have lost to Virginia Tech. I think they will have lost to Alabama. I think they will have lost to Missouri. And Clark Lee will be coaching for his job. Unfortunately, no matter how much he wants it to happen, they don't have players good enough to go on the road against an SEC opponent and win this year. That's just my opinion. So I think Vanderbilt's going to lose to Kentucky here. So I have them moving to 2-4 on the season after losing to Kentucky.
Hater.
A hater.
Doors are coming.
Do you just wake up mad every day? Like, do you just wake up like today's going to be the worst day ever?
Yeah.
You're
pretty
speaking
much
into existence. That's all right.
It's a shame, isn't it, Blake?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be enjoying ourselves. You might as well enjoy the hype going into it, but you're just already saying we're dead in the water.
I'm praying to all above that I'm wrong, but I bought into the hype train harder than anyone last season. That will not happen for me again this year. I am trying to look at things objectively. I do lump Kentucky in. This is why it's hard for me with the Vanderbilt schedule, is I do lump them in, and I'll explain this a little bit more at the end. I do lump them in with some other matchups on the schedule. I think they can beat Kentucky. I'm just more confident in a matchup later in the season, and that's going to be my actual SEC win prediction. So I don't have them going winless in SEC play. I just don't think on the road against Kentucky is the win this year. So we're going to go to a quick TDR cocktail break. And then we're going to hit the last 6 games on the schedule and then give our 3, what did we call it? The 3
bold predictions.
3 bold
We can do like 2 or
predictions for the
3. Yeah.
So we'll do 2 or 3 bold predictions in the second half of the schedule right after the TDR cocktail break. So grab yourself a cold one and we will be right back. Welcome back from the TDR cocktail break. We have the second half of the schedule preview to get to. We discovered over the TDR cocktail break as we were talking with Blake. Blake grew up a Florida Gators fan. I don't want to expose you to the world. We can cut this out if you don't want that information leaked out into the ether. But
No, it's
Blake
true.
was saying he's a Gators fan, so he's a big fan of programs with zero discipline, just
Yeah.
allowing them to run amok. Just a guy that it's crazy to me that he became the grit monster that he is now after that upbringing. But did you watch the Untold about that 2008 team on Netflix, Blake?
I did. And for all fairness, my entire family all went to UF. So, like, there wasn't really another avenue for me. Grandpa, mom, stepmom, stepdad, dad, like, all of them went to UF. So that's just what I was born with.
We got to respect it.
He's on the right side of history now. So that's all that matters.
We got to respect it.
Yeah.
I only brought up the Untold thing on Netflix because that might have been literally the worst documentary ever made in the history of documentaries. It was just a suck fest of Urban Meyer the entire time. They didn't even get into any of the interesting off the field stuff with that team.
Speaking of Florida, though, before we go, how good did it feel to beat Florida in Gainesville in 2013?
Oh my God.
For you specifically, like just you.
All right, I'm not saying coaches' names, and am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Oh yeah, dude, let it rip.
So they scheduled us for homecoming, and we ended up just stomping a mud hole with our ass. And one of the coaches, so we're sitting behind all the student section and the fans and all that, and they're just giving it to us all game. And one of the coaches, I'm not going to say names, turned around after we won and said, "Happy fucking homecoming." And it was
yes.
It was unreal. It was unreal. But yeah, the only win better than that one was when we beat Tennessee with the fake jump pass.
Oh, Blake just asked the question, which is funny to me. As a regular TDR guest now, 3-time guest, that's a regular guest, and a regular listener, I would hope, if he can curse on TDR. Yes, Blake. I would say 99% of the episodes, especially since me and Trevor took over, have been marked as explicit on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So yes, Blake, you can curse. We don't get too crazy, but yeah, some curse words have been uttered specifically after some basketball and football games for sure. So let's get into the second half of this Vanderbilt football schedule. Week 8, Vanderbilt at home. 6 p.m. kick, October 19th, against the Ball State Cardinal.
Probably plural.
Yeah, it's not like Stanford. Ball State Cardinals, I think, is correct. Ball State, not very good. I didn't dig into them an incredible amount, but they were 4-8 last season. Truly bad. Their over-under on wins this season is over-under 4.5, with the over having odds of plus 152. So Vegas expects them to win 4 games. Ball State also, as a little side note, I think is the third. This is on doesn't really matter, but I think they're the third worst team on College Football 25. I think that's right. I think they're a 71 overall.
Wow.
So Ball State, that doesn't actually relate to real on the field, but Ball State's bad. And yeah, Trevor, you got anything to add on the Ball State game?
Yeah, dude, Ball State, more like Ballsack State. These dudes suck. Doors are coming. This is for giving us Riley Neal. I will forever hate you guys. This is the Riley Neal revenge game. Doors win big.
You stole my funny that I was going to say during
Were you
my
gonna say
prediction.
Ballsack State?
I was actually going to talk about Riley Neal.
I hate that guy.
but Blake, what do you got for Ball State?
Tickets are $3 for that game. Okay, so
Affordable.
very
Joe
affordable.
Biden's
Take your
America.
family, take your friends. Yeah, I mean, you could go a long way with a 50. Yeah, Vandy wins big. That's like a breather after going through a little bit of hell. So I think they'll come out strong.
Yeah, I mean, this one doesn't really require that much analysis. This is one that if Vanderbilt loses this, just fire Clark Lee. Like,
Disband the program.
I would even say, and I mean this, I would still be on the fire Clark Lee train if they lose to Georgia State. This is more on the same level as like Alcorn State than the Georgia State game. Ball State is a bad program right now. I won't say historically, but they're very bad right now. You are at home. This is in the middle of the season. You've been used to playing SEC opponents and highly talented opponents. If you lose to Ball State in year 4 under any head coach, it's time to throw in the towel. It's over. So Vanderbilt beats Ball State. As much of a wet blanket as I have been, Vanderbilt beats Ball State at home. Moving on to another easy win for the Vanderbilt Commodores historically. Week 9, Vanderbilt at home against the number 4 Texas Longhorns, October 26th. Texas coming off a 12-2 season, just like Alabama, with a loss in the college football playoff semifinal against Washington, 37-31. Texas's over-under win total, according to FanDuel, is 10.5, with the over at plus 144. Quinn Ewers coming back, a very talented roster coming back. Trevor, how are you seeing this Texas going?
Yeah, you never want to cheer for injuries, but Texas already lost probably their best player on offense outside of Bond and C.J. Baxter, their starting running back, already out for the season. Unfortunately, tore his LCL and MCL. That is a huge loss for them. That kid is good as hell, great running back. Next man up is Blue. Don't know much about him. Know that C.J. Baxter is one of the best running backs in the nation, so that's a huge loss. Historically, Vanderbilt's had their way with Texas, so horns down. I'm going to be honest, boys. Time for me to be a wet blanket. I'm going to go Vanderbilt loss here, unfortunately.
Wow. No faith.
Now, I will say Vanderbilt historically has really screwed things up for the Mannings. Whenever Peyton Manning on his Heisman campaign played Vanderbilt, thought it was going to be an easy game. The Vanderbilt Commodores lost, but put up a valiant effort. Peyton Manning had a bad game, thus making him lose the Heisman. If Arch Manning is going, I think Doors win.
So you're going Doors loss. But if somehow
Yes.
Quinn Ewers has been injured and Arch Manning's out there, then a Doors dub?
Indubitably.
Is that what you're saying?
Indubitably.
All right,
yes.
so Trevor's going Doors L. So a loss on the official
We'll call
prediction.
it a coin flip.
But Trevor's calling this game against Texas a toss-up. Blake, are you in agreement? Is this a coin flip game for the Vanderbilt Commodores?
You know, in the legal field, your arguments are only as good as the precedent, which is the previous decisions and the case law made by judges before. Looking at the precedent here, Vanderbilt should win. We're 8-3 all time. You know, I think Diego Pavia is going to have a Sarkisian get your effing hands off me moment, juke someone, break a tackle, score a touchdown. We're going to win. I got Vanderbilt on top on this one. That's my hot take of the season.
Moving Texas. Moving. Horns down. Moving the all-time record for the Vanderbilt Commodores versus the Texas Longhorns to 9-3.
I love
Dominant. Going bowling against the Texas Longhorns.
They always say, don't mess with Texas. We said, that's bunk.
Blake said we're messing with Texas a little bit.
Yeah, Cornelius about to lay some railroad down through Austin. That city needs some rejuvenation. It's a fake Nashville. It's time for the Doors. This is Clark Lee's moment.
Suck that, Joe Rogan.
I mean,
Move
dude,
to Austin a little more.
in all seriousness, that happened. That's the greatest win in Vanderbilt football history.
It might actually be.
No, that legitimately, that is the greatest win in Vanderbilt football history.
I did go on SEC Unfiltered and say he asked outside of the Tennessee game if there was one game on the schedule you could win, what would it be? And I said Texas. Because I promise you, the Door Report's official account will either be banned or will be on some type of suspension.
Yeah.
If the Vanderbilt Commodores beat Texas.
An FBI watch list.
I will be responding to every single Texas fan that tweets anything from both my personal account and the Door Report's official account. So, Blake, I pray to the highest heavens that you are correct in that. On my non-gold colored glasses, Vanderbilt's going to get absolutely boat raced. So to be the wet blanket again, Vanderbilt loses by 28 plus in this game. I don't think it's going to be competitive from the start. Texas is tremendously more talented, but as Blake said, the historic precedent, you never know. That's why they play the games and kick the ball off. So realistically, I don't see it happening in my fantasy land. Doors are going to win.
Oh, dude, I'll drink to that,
but
brother.
No, I'm officially predicting a loss against the Texas Longhorns. So I think you'll see some Arch Manning. I think you will see him on the field in Nashville. But that's not a good thing.
I think you might see Arch Manning I think I'm hot take. I think he might be the starter by that game.
Texas is going to be good this year. Quinn Ewers is good.
He is good, but I think Arch Manning, like I really do think he's the next. Like I think he's the next great thing.
I think Arch Manning is going to be better. I think Quinn Ewers is that quintessential, very good college quarterback that will be a backup for like 7 years in the NFL.
I agree with that actually.
So
yeah,
I just think Arch is waiting his time. But Texas loss out for me and Trevor. Blake has the gobsmacking national headline-making prediction: the Vanderbilt Commodores upset Texas. It is at home. It is at home for Vanderbilt inside of First Bank. I have a feeling there will be quite a bit of burnt orange inside of that stadium. But after the Texas game, this is some time to build. This is a moment to build some real momentum here, Blake. Vanderbilt Commodores for you coming off a victory against Texas. Week 10, they go on the road and face Auburn November 2nd. In 2023, Vanderbilt, of course, lost to Auburn 31-15. Last year, Auburn went 6-6 and then went on to lose their bowl game against Maryland, finishing the season 6-7. The storyline that we've been bringing up repeatedly is not what Vanderbilt did last year against Auburn. It's what New Mexico State did last year against Auburn. They had a lot of success. What was the final score of that game?
We played Auburn last year?
Yeah.
Dude, I don't remember that for some reason. Was it at home?
No.
Dude, I'm having some sort of like brain malfunction. Well, I don't remember that game.
It's messing you up because it feels wrong. Because Vanderbilt historically
should have them at home.
But no, Vanderbilt just never. No, I don't remember if Auburn was on the road or at home. But historically, Vanderbilt only plays Auburn like every 8 years.
Yeah.
And they're playing them in back-to-back seasons, which feels very, very weird. So Vanderbilt's traveling on the road to Jordan O'Hare. But last year, New Mexico State went on the road and dominated Auburn. And you brought over, of course, anybody listening to this at this point knows this, but you brought over New Mexico State's offensive coordinator, New Mexico State's former head coach. You brought over Pavia, their starting quarterback from last season. You brought over their starting running back from last season. You brought over their starting tight end from last season. So this is one of those games, even if Auburn is going to take a step forward and get better, that you might highlight and circle as a potential Vanderbilt Commodores victory. Trevor, what are you predicting for Auburn?
I'm going to be honest, guys. I think the Doors get it done. I think the Doors get it done. I think the Doors get their 6th win of the season here. Really, the whole reason I'm basing this on is you bring Diego Pavia, you bring Tim Beck, you bring Jerry Kill. Last year, they went into Jordan Hare and beat that Auburn team with a much – and we can hate on the talent level that Vandy has right now, but they went into Jordan Hare and beat that Auburn team with a much less talented team than Jerry Kill and Tim Beck have right now. I really think this is a game that Vanderbilt could go in, and I think that they could get the dub. I also just bias. I hate Hugh Freeze. I don't think he's a good person. I would like to see him lose every single game. I think the Doors get their 6th win here. I really, really do believe it.
So Trevor's predicting a victory over Auburn on the road. Blake, what do you think about this matchup?
I think Auburn is actually, of the teams we're playing, they're in the best position to come up with a game plan for us. Because if you don't think they've watched that New Mexico State film 100,000 times, just out of embarrassment and drilling it into them, this is never happening again. Like they're coming into the game, they're going to be somewhat familiar with the offense we're running because they saw it last year. Sorry to fade you on this one, Trevor. I don't see it on this game.
So Blake is going with a loss. I very much agree with the points you just made, Blake. Like, it's one of those that feels so obvious as like this is the potential SEC victory for Vanderbilt. But at the same time, Auburn is very aware of what happened last season, and they're going to be very prepared and not fooled by the wrinkles that were put into place by Tim Beck and Jerry Kill before the last game. So on the road, Jordan O'Hare is a tough place to win, even though New Mexico State did it last season. Jarquez Hunter is back for Auburn. Very talented guy. They also brought in a top 5 overall recruit at the wide receiver position in the class of 2024 in Cam Coleman. They brought in a receiver from Georgia State, who we already mentioned before, Robert Lewis. Very talented guy. They brought in a Penn State veteran in Keandre Lambert-Smith. And then you have Peyton Thorne coming back. So it feels too obvious. It's the game I've talked about repeatedly as a potential win. I'm going to go with you, Blake. I don't think they do it. I think they lose this one. Still sitting at 3 wins for me. We'll recap at the end. I'm not sure where we're at overall in records between all of us, but I'm going with a loss against Auburn. I don't know if I mentioned it, but they're over under 7.5 wins, according to FanDuel in the season, with the over being at plus 124. It just feels too obvious to me. I don't like that's a
fair.
very dumb reason to predict a loss, but it just feels like it's too on the nose that Vanderbilt is going to hire the staff, pillage the roster of New Mexico State, who won 31-10 last year against Auburn, and then come in and do it again.
Mm-hmm.
That's not very logical, but it's my logic I'm using. Moving on to week 11, a home game against South Carolina, another winnable SEC matchup, November 9th. Last year, Vanderbilt played South Carolina. Probably their worst performance of the season. I don't say that lightly. Probably their worst performance of the season against a very mediocre to bad South Carolina team. Vanderbilt lost 47-6. Last year, South Carolina went 5-7. Their over-under this season is at 5.5, with the over sitting at minus 134. Shane Beamer, their head coach, potentially on the hot seat. Trevor, this is a winnable matchup. How do you see this going?
Yeah, so here's the thing. I think South Carolina is going to suck this year. I think by the time that they have this matchup with Vanderbilt, I think Shane Beamer is basically already going to have received the pink slip. I think he's going to be on his way out of South Carolina. I can't really say, do I think Lenora Sellers is a good quarterback? Because you don't know anything about the kid. So people who say he might be good, I don't really trust it either. You know nothing about the kid. I do think Rocket Sanders is a great running back. I think he's going to be a real threat. But I think that South Carolina is going to be absolutely just demoralized by the time that they face this Vanderbilt team. I think Shane Beamer is not going to really have much motivation. And I think the Doors lose this game. I think the Doors lose because we are never, ever, ever going to beat South Carolina ever again in my lifetime. It's just never, ever going to happen. We could literally field the greatest college football team of all time, and South Carolina could trot out literal Uber drivers, and they would somehow beat us. We're never beating South Carolina ever again.
I kind of knew that right turn was coming, or left turn was coming, because everything you built up there was not saying, I think the Doors lose this game. So Trevor's predicting a loss, very out of character. But South Carolina, impossible to beat.
It's just, when are we going to do it?
Blake, what are you thinking about this South Carolina matchup at home?
So I didn't look at their schedule until just now. They got Kentucky, LSU, Ole Miss, Bama, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M before us. Like, we're going to be beat up, but oh my God, they're going through the gauntlet before they even see us. Heck, I got us at 6 wins already. I gotta take some heat off of this. You know what? Hack Squat, I'm a bigger fan than you. We're beating South Carolina this year. We're beating South Carolina this year.
So Blake's going with a win.
Oh, dude, I love
Breaking
it.
the curse.
Prove me wrong, baby.
Breaking the curse. South Carolina this year. Shane Beamer, I think he will be fired after the season personally. Lenora Sellers, I don't know anything about him. He's completely unproven, like Trevor said. But I've seen his face. I don't like his face. I don't think it's the face of a good SEC quarterback. So I'm going to go with he's an absolute bust just from the look of – I don't like the cut of his jib. You know what I mean?
No aura.
Yeah, no aura about him. South Carolina lost Xavier Legette, obviously, to the NFL draft on the Panthers now. They lost Juice Wells to Ole Miss. They lost their starting tight end. They got drafted by the Vikings. Their offensive line potentially going to continue to struggle. At some point, curses are meant to be broken. Streaks are meant to be broken. Vanderbilt has not beaten South Carolina since 2008. This is the year. Vanderbilt is going to beat South Carolina this year. This is going to be the nail in the coffin for Shane Beamer. Vanderbilt at home gets their first SEC win of the season, moving them to 4 wins, fully securing Clark Lee's job. Vanderbilt beats South Carolina. So me and Blake both have wins against South Carolina in week 11. Trevor, the fake fan, has a loss to South
fraud.
Carolina. The fraud.
Hack squat fraud
has a loss. So then Vanderbilt goes into a bye week in week 12 before a tough last couple games to close out the schedule. Week 13, Vanderbilt goes on the road to face preseason number 13 LSU on November 23rd in Death Valley. Last year, LSU went 9-3, 10-3 after their bowl game victory against Wisconsin. Their current over-under is 9.5 wins, according to FanDuel. Their over is sitting at plus 176. Trevor, any hope against LSU? Mr. Win Predictor.
No, I think Vanderbilt loses this game, but I think it's to pull Lee Corso. I think it's closer than the experts think, because I think Clark Lee's going to really want to stick it to Brian Kelly, his former employer. I don't think they win. I think going into to Death Valley, regardless of how good an LSU team is borderline impossible to do. I think Vanderbilt loses, but I would not be shocked if this is like a 2-possession ball game final score. I think Clark Lee's going to try really hard knowing it's against Brian Kelly.
So a relatively close loss for you, but still a loss nonetheless.
Yeah. If I could. Then again, guys, this is like all the way in November, and we're still in August. We have no idea what the hell we're talking about, if we're being honest. They could blow us out. Like, we could blow them out. Who knows? But right now, where things stand, I wouldn't be shocked if Vanderbilt lost by 10.
So Trevor with a loss, but a competitive loss. Mr. Sunshine Pumper, Blake Fromang. Do you think Vanderbilt comes out and truly shocks the nation and beats LSU, potentially making that matchup against Tennessee in the final week of the season a spot in the college football playoff against Tennessee? Does Vanderbilt secure win number 8 against LSU in Death Valley?
As they say in Spanish, no. I think we're gonna get cooked. That's a cook-up game for me. Like, we're gonna get it a couple times every season. I think, they're gonna get the Cajun put on them. So I don't know about that one, guys.
They're gonna get that Tony Chacharis put on them. Unfortunately,
yeah. I didn't really. This is like the least I dug into any opponent that Vanderbilt has this season. Because of the same reason you said, going into Death Valley, even against a mediocre LSU opponent, is borderline impossible. I think Vanderbilt gets boat raced. I think it's going to be a domination by LSU. Don't really have much else to add on that. I just think LSU is tremendously better than Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
I think it's not going to be. I will say, being a Vanderbilt fan, you get to experience some very interesting opponents coming into Nashville. If you have season tickets to Vanderbilt football, you get to see some historic teams.
Yeah.
That 2019 LSU team was the best offense I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Not even close the best offense I've ever seen. Just like, what was it, 2021 Georgia?
Yeah.
That was so dominant. So I don't know. I don't have any hope against this LSU team, so I'm going with a loss. Then we move into the last week of the season, week 14 rivalry week. Vanderbilt at home this season against Tennessee, November 30th. The kickoff window has already been announced. It's going to be an early kickoff, but in the 11 to 12 p.m. window. So that sucks really bad for a tailgate. We were hoping would be an all-day tailgate. But last year, Vanderbilt played Tennessee on the road, lost 48-24, was never really close. Tennessee's over-under, according to FanDuel this year, is 8.5 wins, with the over sitting at -172. So really, Vegas is expecting Tennessee to win 9 games this season. Last year, Josh Heupel went 8-4, 9-4 after their dominant bowl game victory against Iowa, 35-0. Trevor, can the Commodores end the current winning streak for the Tennessee Volunteers?
Here's the thing, guys. Funky things happen at the bank during an early kick. I'm saying it. We all know those early kicks against Vandy at the bank, they're a little sleepy. Not a lot of juice. Haven't had a ton of time to drink yet. People still drinking coffee. You're trying to wake up. Funky things happen at the bank at an early kick. Also, I have to do it because as not a fraud myself, I will never pick us to lose against Tennessee. Vandy shocks the nation. Doors win big, keeps Tennessee out of the playoff, a la the 2016 game where we kept them out of the Sugar Bowl. It was always the Doors. It is the Doors forever. Doors beat the Vols. 7-5, baby. We're going bowling.
Blake, what do you have to say to that?
I could have Hack Squad as my quarterback, my center, my safety, my defensive end. Heck, he could be my head coach. I don't care who it is. I am never picking Tennessee over the boys. I will not do it. I don't care if Peyton Manning comes back and plays for them and they got everyone else. Hell no. Doors on top. Doors by 1 billion. Tennessee won't score.
So Blake going another victory. This is some deep chestnut checkers. All right?
Okay.
Because whatever I want, regardless if it's sports, relationships, life in general, the only moment that what I truly want to happen happens is when I've fully lost hope.
Mm-hmm.
And I fully have no faith anything is going to happen. I think Tennessee curb stomps Vanderbilt. And I will say that with the caveat of I don't think Nico makes it through the entire season. I think you're seeing their backup quarterback. I don't think you can make it through an entire season at 6'6", 195 pounds in the SEC. I think either Tennessee is going to struggle tremendously early in the season because they're going to have told Nico to not run at all, or he's going to be injured by week 8. I think it's one of the other, one of those two. With that being said, I think Tennessee dominates Vanderbilt. They're better at basically every single position. I think the Josh Heupel offense is an absolute fucking nightmare for Vanderbilt to defend because it spreads out athletes and isolates athletes versus athletes, which is always Vanderbilt's problem, is having enough athletes to compete in the SEC at a high level. So I think Vanderbilt loses because I have to be the wet blanket of this entire podcast, but I have no hope. So that means Blake and Trevor's predictions might be right if I truly have no hope. Because when I have hope is when Vanderbilt falls off the cliff.
Trevor and I are what can be, and you are burdened by what has been. You're on the wrong side of history, bro.
I have not been listening to Kamala Harris.
You're so burdened. You're burdened.
I must think, I personally think I've just fallen out of a coconut tree. I did fall out of the coconut tree. That's why I'm burdened by what has been. So I'm burdened and I fell out of a coconut tree.
You know what else is going to fall out of a coconut tree? Diego Pavia's nuts on Josh Heupel's head. Doors win big, baby. Piss on the tee.
All right, let's run back through this schedule and let's recap our predictions. So I know you don't have the schedule in front of you, so I'll try to pull up the 2024 schedule so you can run through, Trevor. But just run through game by game your predictions and then give your final record prediction. And then we'll do the same for you, Blake.
Game 1, August 31st, Vautech, Doors dub. Saturday, September 7th, Alcorn State, Doors dub. September 14th, Georgia State, Doors dub. September 21st, Doors L, Missouri, unfortunately. I think that's going to be a tough game. Saturday, October 5th, Alabama Crimson Tide, unfortunately, Doors dub. October 12th, at the Kentucky Wildcats. We don't shop at Kroger. We shop at Publix. Doors win. October 19th, Ball Sack State Cardinals. Doors win. October 26th, Texas Longhorns. Horns down. I do think Doors lose that, though. November 2nd, at Auburn Tigers. It was always Diego Pavia. It was always Tim Beck. It was always Jerry Kill. Doors dub against the Auburn Tigers. November 9th, South Carolina Gamecocks. We are never beating these guys as long as I so live. Unfortunately, Doors L. November 23rd, at Death Valley. Unfortunately, I think that is a Vanderbilt loss. November 30th, the Tennessee Vols come to the bank. It's time to piss on the tee. Doors win 7-5.
Trevor predicts 7-5. Blake, recap yours for the listeners out there.
All right, I got us beating Virginia Tech. I got us beating Alcorn State, Georgia State. We're going to lose to Missouri, Alabama. Let's see, Kentucky. I had us winning that game. Yeah, who shops at Kroger? What are we doing there? There's Whole Foods, there's Sprouts. Heck, even Aldi, if you're just having a tough one, you can go in there, and that's better than Kroger. So 360 dunk on Kroger. Ball State win. Texas, which is just another funny way to say taxes, which everybody hates. Easy dub. We're going to cook. Vanderbilt, Auburn, I got us losing. South Carolina, win. LSU, no chance in hell. Tennessee, I will go to my grave before I ever pick them over the boys.
So what's your overall record after that?
I should have counted 1, 2, 3,
That's our lawyer.
4.
That's my quant.
5, 6, 7. Oh my God, this is a horrible prediction. 8-4.
8-4. Blake has the boys 8-4. Trevor at 7-5. To recap mine, because I have to be somehow. I am
bastard.
I'm a game and a half above the Vegas over under, and I'm the wet blanket on this podcast. Virginia Tech loss, Alcorn State win, Georgia State win, Missouri loss, Bama loss, Kentucky loss, Ball State win, Texas loss, Auburn loss, South Carolina win, LSU loss, Tennessee loss. I have the boys going 4-8. But I did keep bringing up the kind of groups because I did predict South Carolina as the win of that group. I have the schedule broken out in 3 categories. Number 1 is won't win, and that is 5 games. That is Missouri, Alabama, Texas, LSU, Tennessee. I think those are all 5 games that 9 out of 10 times Vanderbilt loses. Minimum 9 out of 10 times. So that's 5 losses off the rip. I think the will win / must win category is very obvious. Alcorn State, Georgia State, Ball State. Those are 3 wins. Chalk them up. And then you have the can win category. That doesn't mean a full 50-50 coin flip, but that means these are potentially winnable games. Virginia Tech, Kentucky, Auburn, South Carolina. My real prediction is Vanderbilt will win those 3 games that are will win, must win. They will lose those 5 games, and then they will go 1-3 in the Virginia Tech, Kentucky, Auburn, South Carolina. So they're going to go 4-8, but they're going to go 1-3 in those 4 games. So that's it for the schedule preview. Do we want to do our 2 or 3 bold predictions? Because I don't have anything written down, but I know, Trevor, you've prepared some, and I think Blake might have a couple.
I've got them whenever you're ready.
You can go ahead and rattle them off, bud.
Dude, and like I said, these are bold predictions, so they're going to be bold. Number 1, Demarion Thomas is second-team All-SEC defense this year. Big season for my boy Demarion Thomas.
That's big, bold.
Oh, is it my turn?
we're not
this one.
No,
Okay.
Go ahead, Blake. I was just saying we're not going around because I don't even have any. So
Okay, so I was scrolling Twitter last night, and they just, you start scrolling late night, and you find some weird stuff. So my bold prediction is Gunnar Hansen, first team All-SEC, and the reason I
love
say
that pick.
I say that because last night as I was scrolling Twitter, I follow like old movie stuff where you can see clips of it. Gunnar Hansen is an actor who played Leatherface in the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre game. He's going to have a big game against Texas based on that.
obviously,
And he's going to solidify himself as a SEC first team player. I think he's going to have a big breakout year. And the second prediction I have is, let's see, I don't know. That's kind of all I had.
Trevor,
You
keep going.
I love that Gunnar Hansen prediction. So we're going to stay on the topic of offensive line. I think Stephen Lasoya at center, second team All-SEC this year. I think that kid's got it. I think he's going to be really good. I'm glad Blake brought up Gunnar Hansen because I'm a Gunnar Hansen truther. And for my third and final bold prediction, I think Martell Height leads the team in interceptions this year.
You stole my only kind of semi-bold prediction because I didn't have any prepared. My only prediction was this doesn't take anything away from Colby Taylor. I do think my bold prediction by the end of the year, Martell Height is going to be viewed as the best cornerback in the room. If I had one bold prediction, that doesn't take away. I think Colby Taylor is going to be really good this year. Every other bold prediction I have is going to be negative. Like if we want to do true bold predictions,
Lame.
Just
Like
burdened predictions. You're just burdened by what has been.
I am. I think that's probably the main problem is I've grown up my entire life through all of my formative years until I was 25 and my brain was fully developed and I realized how stupid I was. I consumed so much Vanderbilt football. So naturally, I see every disastrous route that things can possibly go. And I did have I want to call it a curse. I want to call it a curse for when you were there. And I had that stretch of the James Franklin era. And I had the stretch of talent and even the Derek Mason era after that, where it was like I saw the mountaintop. We didn't get there, but I saw there is possibility of light at the end of the tunnel, and it gave me too much hope. And now and then I came crashing down so hard on the other side. So I can really see, and I mean this I can see as a bold prediction, this offense could be historically bad for Vanderbilt. I don't know if that's a bold prediction. I mean, I think this offense, I don't mean I'm predicting this can happen. I think they'll be okay. I think they'll be able to implement the run. It'll be a lot slower paced of an offense, much more ball control oriented. I could see this offense being like worse than last year by a lot. And that says a lot. Like a lot of 3-and-outs, a lot of runs. The offensive line can just not create space in SEC play. They're trying to run a New Mexico State offense that's playing in G5 football week in, week out against SEC opponents. That's my real bold prediction, is I could see this offense and everything Clark Lee's trying to implement just blow up and get dismantled after year one. I could see Tim Beck and Jerry Kill being fired after this year. That is a bold prediction.
I
don't like it. I don't want to make that bold prediction. I can see it happening though. I like Pavia. This is not what I want to happen or necessarily what I see happening, but I can see Pavia coming out and just looking like a complete deer in the headlights. And the game is truly just moving too fast for him. And he's undersized. He has a funky throwing motion. It takes too long to release the football behind a bad offensive line. I could see that happening. That's not really a bold prediction, but it is my nightmare scenario that is kind of realistic.
Do you just like telling kids Santa's not real? Like, or you know,
love that. I vividly remember when I was like 4 or 5 years old, running around as a kid playing, walking up to my mom at 5 years old and saying, "Is Santa real?" And her saying, "No, he's
finance
not."
Guys, man.
And she said, "Don't tell anybody that." And that's when I said, "I'm going to stare at spreadsheets for the entirety of my life." That's when I decided I was like, "Santa's not real." At Microsoft Excel, here I come.
Increasing value for shareholders.
I love increasing shareholder value. But I really, this year, I think it's because I got burned so badly last year. Like I hate repeating that over and over, but I really did buy in last year. Like I was drinking the Kool-Aid heavily. And so this year I'm so leaning towards any negative tidbit that comes out of camp because we've basically heard nothing over the summer and the fall, like positive or negative. But any negative tidbit I'm like clinging to. And any positive, I'm just like tossing it away. Like that's not real. It's just sunshine pumping. So overall, I know you predicted 8-4, Blake. How are you really feeling heading into this year? Are you feeling positive, negative, like things are moving in the right direction? What are you feeling?
All jokes aside, I think this year definitely has the chance to be a Hindenburg. I think it could go down very bad. Like I really do. All the signs are there, but you know, I can't live my life like that. I can't be Mr. Finance where it's all numbers, no emotions. You know, my heart's in the game. I'm a fan. You know, it's bigger than that for me. So I gotta cheer on the boys. But you know, I agree with you with the Clark Lee thing. He doesn't tell anyone anything. He's like coach speak, but with a thesaurus. So he uses bigger words and bigger concepts. It's kind of the same exact thing as everyone else is saying, but he's like, my words are a little bit fancier. They're, you know.
They're Vanderbilt words.
Sesquipedalian, someone who uses big words. I think that's the name for it. But he just likes using big, complicated words. And it's like, I get what you're saying. Just say it a little. But I can't get a read on the team. I can't. Everything's behind closed doors. I have no idea.
What was that word you just used? Because remember, we went to Tennessee Tech and Austin Peay.
Yeah, we went to state schools.
We went to public institutions in the state. So.
Y'all keep talking. Let me look it up because I'm definitely pronouncing it wrong.
I know loquacious means talkative.
Ooh,
If
yeah,
that's
that Jerry
a good word.
Stackhouse word.
Yeah,
I
that's
think Jerry
loquacious.
Stackhouse used
Oh,
loquacious.
it's sesquipedalian. Someone who just uses big, long words when they don't need to.
Clark Lee reminds me of, as a man that loves providing shareholder value, Clark Lee reminds me of when you have like a CFO come and talk, not a CEO, a CFO. Every word is very measured and very, like, he's not revealing anything either way. Like, it's very measured. I don't know if that's a great quality to have in a head coach, but it is what Clark Lee has. So he kind of has, he's very much leaned into it. I don't know if it's benefiting him, but he's leaned into it quite a bit. Well, why are you laughing, Trevor?
I can't say it on pod. We'll say it was a claw. I hate to do this to the fans, but
I don't even know what you're.
A memory. Hold on. I'm gonna, guys, for those watching, I'm gonna whisper into Will's ear. Blake will know.
Blake, you'll like this.
Blake will know.
We'll mention it once we get off. So this feels like a good time to close out episode 278. Blake, thank you for joining. Blake Fromang, Commodore legend. Anything you want to add here as a 3-time guest at the end of episode 278?
Yeah, shout out my boy George Barclay. Told him I'd give him a shout out. Boston, Georgie. Keep the faith and keep it moving forward. Thank you guys for having me.
Blake, thank you for taking the time and joining. This will not be the last time you join TDR. We will definitely be hitting your line during the football season. You will hopefully bless us with your presence during the fall this year. But for myself, Will Byrum, and my co-host Trevor Hulan, this has been episode 278 of The Door Report, powered by 615 Collectibles.